guys, we are live. Just to give us, we're going to do a little introduction while we wait for some of our viewers to kind of jump on. But we're going to talk about writing today. And my name is Regina. I'm a speech language pathologist at Progressive Pediatric Therapy. And I'm really passionate about working with children with autism. AAC devices is a big one for me. And I love everything literacy. So reading and writing is my jam. So
I am Ms. Tiffany, and I'm an occupational therapist at Progressive Pediatric. And what am I passionate about? I really like big kids, but I have a lot of training in handwriting. So it's a skill that I've learned and acquired over time. So I'm here to help kind of break that down and share it with our friends out there and families.
Yay! So one of the questions we wanted to ask you guys while we're kind of waiting for a few of our friends to kind of join in is, if you have any children, comment below what is the strangest place your child has drawn on. So my child is only 4 months old, so I can't comment on this, but I'm an older cousin, and when I would babysit, my youngest cousin would take chalk and she would draw like in her closet. Like she would go and hide and draw in her closet, which I thought was the funniest thing. What about you, Tiffany?
The strangest place that one of my children has ever drawn is all over his entire body with a black marker. But last night we actually had, the kids were running around the house drawing on everything with dry erase markers, which comes off with alcohol, in case you were wondering.
Good to know.
Well, we're drawing on the doors and the walls.
Yeah, and Leora said under every single table in my house, my kids have drawn on. So I don't think you're alone.
It's like the Sistine Chapel.
Yes. So we've got Jessica here. We have Bonnie here. Leora's here. Teresa. Teresa said walls, tables, doors, and gotta love magic markers, magic erasers, because they do take care of everything.
They do. It's true.
So, well, thank you guys for joining us, and we are going to talk about writing. Whose job is it anyway? This is an area where occupational therapy and speech therapy, we really overlap, but although we overlap, we do things very differently and kind of attack writing from different perspectives, different points of views, and different skills that are required for writing, because they really do fall under both umbrellas very strongly. Wouldn't you agree, Tiffany?
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of times families are like, oh, well, Miss Regina was working on this too. And yes, we do. We overlap, and we are definitely approaching it from very different standpoints because our jobs are different. So, yes.
So, Tiffany, what do you think, if you could, kind of give us a grand idea of occupational therapy and what you do in your line of work when it comes to writing?
Okay, so from the occupational therapy standpoint, we are really looking at the mechanics of writing. We are looking at the mechanics of forming letters, but we're also looking at the mechanics of the body, the fine motor skills, the upper extremity skills, strength, core, posture, sensory processing. Shall I go on? Visual motor skills, hand-eye coordination. Okay, I'll let you go. What about you, Miss Regina?
So that's interesting, because you think like occupational therapy is more like mechanical. In speech therapy, we look more of like the expressive part of writing. So just like in spoken language, we're looking at like phonology and morphology, like, are they putting an S at the end of shoes? Because we're talking about two. We're looking at syntax. Are they saying the boy running, or is he saying the boy is running? Like, are we writing that? So, and then just the pragmatics of written language, like, can we read this and follow along? Does it connect to the reader, or does it make sense? So that's kind of like the back and forth of like occupational therapy and speech therapy. And we're going to kind of dive in now into more like age groups of what OT is going to address and what speech is going to address when it comes to writing.
So I also just want to add, before we dive into age groups, that we are looking at a typical progression of writing development from an OT standpoint and an SLP standpoint. However, a lot of our children have developmental delays. So we have to remember that they may chronologically be a certain age, but they may developmentally have skills for a lower age. And that's what they need to be working on, because all of these skills for handwriting, whether for speech or OT, are foundational. And so we start at a foundation and then they're progressive. They can't really move on to certain components if they don't have the foundational components.
Exactly. And I think it goes along with speech too, because just like language, it's a foundation. Just like when you build a house, you need the foundation before you build the structure. You need the structure before you build the walls. Everything kind of builds on each other. And same thing when we talk about these age groups, it's not so much as an age group as it is developmentally where our children kind of lie. So let's kind of dive into like preschool kind of age. So this is like our young writers of the world. And I'm definitely going to let Miss Tiffany take it away from here, because speech, we really don't focus too much on the actual like action of writing before the age of 5. Like we don't really have even assessments that really go into writing on the age of 5. However, there are prerequisites that are required of that. So even though we may not be working on writing, we would be working on prerequisite skills such as like identifying numbers and letters, corresponding sounds, like what letter says or what sound does the letter T make. Those are more prerequisite skills, but we're not actually working on pencil to paper writing.
And I think that when we're talking about that preschool age, we're really talking about that 2 to 3 to 4, 5, early 5. You're really looking at a big span. So really in like that speech standpoint, reading to your child, articulating words, repetitive things, those are all working on that handwriting, identifying letters, all those things. In OT, this time is when we're really looking at fine motor skill development. All right. So this is when we really want to be developing the hands and the arms and the reach and the hand-eye coordination that children need in order to. So that's why we want to work on our hand skills and our hand strength to develop the appropriate prehension to start being able to develop writing grasp. There is a development progression of writing grasp itself, from the fist to the ditch prone to the static tripod to the dynamic tripod, and how we develop. There's also foundational components of being able to make foundational shapes. So there is a developmental progression of actually being able to make vertical and horizontal lines, being able to make intersecting lines, being able to draw a circle, being able to then make squares, triangles, diagonal lines, intersecting X's. So you look at a developmental progression of foundational shapes at this time as well. So we are also looking at letter identification from the standpoint that a child cannot learn how to write the symbol for something if they cannot identify it. If a child doesn't know a square, teaching them to make a square is obsolete. They don't know what it is. Teaching them to make an A, if they don't know what an A is not, it makes no sense. So.
Yeah, and I think that's where speech kind of jumps in too, because that language of identifying, the object to the name of it. So again, that's that prerequisite skill of, okay, this is what a square is. This is the name square. Can you find a square? Okay, receptively, you can identify it. But if I show you the square and I say, what shape is this? Do they actually know how to name it? So again, it's kind of like we work in tandem in that sense that receptively, they need to understand what the word square means, but expressively, they also need to know, okay, do I actually know the name of it? I can identify it, but can I say square? So that's kind of an area that's maybe we're not doing pen to paper, but we're still working on writing, even as in those early stages.
And while we are addressing the hand skills, and we are working on the visual motor components of making shapes, we're also doing things like playing ball and catching and saying the alphabet, or jumping and hitting the letters of the alphabet, being able to find them in a scavenger hunt. So as OTs, we are always trying to incorporate those skills also with the other motor skills, because of the neurons that fire together, wire together, like that's the brain, So, and there are times where in the preschool, like when you're looking at that 4 VPK or that older, the earlier 5, they are starting to learn components of making letters. And sometimes they're starting to learn their names, but not every child is ready for it. And unfortunately, this is something that gets really pushed when they don't have the fine motor skills to do it. That's when you're going to start seeing difficulties with making the letters if they're not given a foundation for the proper hand or the proper formation of letters.
And I think that's a perfect segue into like our next kind of age group is like that kindergarten age. So this is like the start of writing, that 5 and 6 year old kind of thing. And both of us, both disciplines, we are going to still work on targeting uppercase letters, writing on a baseline, writing and forming, just all the letters in the alphabet. But from a speech point of view, in addition to all of that, we're also looking at, can they understand and follow directions? Do they understand what I mean when I say copy this word? Do they know what copy means? A lot of times you'll see that maybe kiddos can write and copy, but when I give them an academic task of, okay, here's a word, copy it from the board or copy it from my paper, they don't actually know what copy means. So in addition to kind of working on the letters, practicing our names, we're also kind of looking at the beginning stages of, can you follow academic directions?
I was just going to add that also both of us kind of work on that prepositional component where it's like top and bottom, side, under, behind, next to, where we're looking at those prepositional components, because when we start to teach the formation of letters, we like to know where the top is and where the bottom is, because we need to start at the top to get to the bottom. To reduce friction, essentially. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, or can I go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about that, where we are now with that kindergarten?
I'm trying to think, really like that kindergarten, like you said, it's that, they need these prerequisite skills. They need to be able to hold the pencil appropriately. They need those, like that fine motor strength. And a lot of times I see that if I have a kindergartner or even a first grader who is missing that aspect of writing, that strength building, I may not even address writing right now, because again, like that scaffolding, that building up, I need an OT. I need help developing that fine motor skills before I can even expect them to write their name on a piece of paper or copy a word to a baseline. They really need, that's why occupational therapy and speech, it's so important for us to work together, especially in these early stages of writing.
And I think so often speech therapy will refer to OT when a child doesn't have the skills to sit still and attend, because a child cannot learn how to write if they cannot sit still and attend. It is not, it is a part of the foundation itself. So sensory processing and attention and all those things, the regulation come into play with that. So often you see, they say, we can't do this. We need to send them to OT to help with this attention component.
Right.
So from a standpoint of the mechanics of writing in kindergarten age, we're talking about uppercase letters typically, because there are less strokes needed in order to make uppercase letters. You're really looking at mostly big lines, little lines, big curves, and small curves. And my son is 5. I'm an OT, but I'm also a homeschool mom who's taught kids to write, in my job, but also at home. And my son is actually working through the Handwriting Without Tears preschool book, because he's learning at this point, you're looking at foundational shapes and making sure those are in place. And you're also looking at bigger is better. Okay, so when you're working on uppercase letters, you're looking at it like a nice large sizing for writing. So my son, when he's practicing at this kindergarten age, he's working on very large sizes. And so we're kind of looking at teaching the formation of uppercase letters. I think I could share right now some pictures.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. So this is my son working with, so a lot of what I use to do remediation and handwriting training is Handwriting Without Tears based. I have 25 hours of training from the program in their actual programs, their curriculum, the activities, and the products. So I use it in my treatment, but I also use it in teaching. It's nice to be able to teach children how to write, because then you can teach them a lot of what they miss out on in school, like the structure, the formation, not just being asked to trace over letters. So this is my son using products where we're working on, as you can see, it's big, he's using the big line and the little curves from the wood pieces. Let's see. Here he is practicing his letter B on the, just to learn that when we're teaching the letter formation, we're actually using, and when I'm teaching it, I'm actually using language that they can remember and that they can repeat. So we always say, start at the smiley face, big line down, frog jump to the top, little curve bump, little curve bump. So why that's so important is when you're teaching letter formation, they can actually not only develop the muscle memory through this these different multisensory approach. They're also learning the language, so they can say it to themselves. They can sing it to themselves. They can say, where do you start your letters? At the top. All right. So it's a teaching handwriting at that kindergarten, that VPK kindergarten age. We're looking at letter formation and using, I was just going to go through these pictures. He's tracing a card with his finger and he's doing that same thing. Start at the smiley face, big line down, frog jump to the top, little curve bump, little curve bump. So it's a constant practice of the same thing from a sensory approach. Excuse me, guys. All right. I think this is my last picture. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay.
And I think it'd be good too to jump on that as a speech therapist too. And this is why progressive pediatric therapy is so great, because we have, we have our disciplines and we do work so well together, is that when I see a child and we're working on writing and I do see them start from the bottom and work their way up and do some kind of interesting formations, I'm not going to just leave that be just because it doesn't fall under my scope of practice. I'm still going to piggyback off of occupational therapy, foundations and say, no, we start from the top and you work your way down. And that's why it's so great that we all work together, and so that your child gets the most enriched experience of when it comes to therapy, because we are constantly working together and they are constantly getting more new opportunities to practice their skills.
So I would like to let our parents know, our viewers know, also what's really important at this time is to continue correcting writing grasp. So while we're teaching letter formation, while we're teaching these things and helping them with them and using all of their senses in order to develop the skill, we also have to keep working those fine motor skills. We have to keep developing that hand strength, and we have to keep developing the arches of the hands so that we can reach that gold standard of that tripod. Another thing we're doing in this kindergarten time is we're teaching them to write within the space that they're given. So right now, I was showing you the larger letters because that's where I'm at. Developmentally, I don't push my children to go super fast for writing. It's one of the reasons why I homeschool. However, in school, you see them writing in 1-inch lines, in 1-inch sizes. As you can see, Handwriting Without Tears uses blocks, which I love, especially when you're teaching uppercase letters, right? And then you've got, here's that 1-inch line to teach the child to write using that 1-inch line. Handwriting Without Tears only uses a double line, and they do that to minimize the visual confusion that happens. There's so many different types of paper and so many different types of options. Sometimes our kids that have visual processing disorders or even just attention difficulties, it's overwhelming to look at so many different colors and so many lines and so many things on a page. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so they minimize it that way. But and schools use what they use. So it's really helping that child learn that this is the space I'm writing within. So sizing starts to become something as you see them go through kindergarten as well.
Mm-hmm. So that's like we did some preschool, we did some kindergarten, and now let's kind of jump into that early elementary school years. And what I kind of think is interesting is it's almost like a wave, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tiffany, but it's kind of like a wave where like maybe in the beginning of our early writers, OT is very like strong into like building that muscle memory and that strength. But as they kind of get older, kind of speech starts to take a little bit more emphasis too, because once you're writing, there's language opens up a huge, a big door when it comes to as they get older with language. So in the early elementary school years is where it gets really fun, because that's where they're starting to learn to write using their language to that they're finding, oh, writing is actually another way to communicate. It's another way to talk. So both of us are going to be working on, like you said, the spacing, the sizing, maybe introducing those lowercase letters now. But speech, we're going to start looking at recognizing patterns in spelling, like word families or rhymes or other kind of phonemic and phonetic rules. So one of the things I have to show is like the word families, which is really important because you're looking at these. Oh man, I thought I had it up. You're looking at, I'll use the whiteboard. Patterns, and you're looking at familiar sounds. So for example, a word family might be a word family that ends with at. So that's a word that's like cat, bat, that kind of thing. So we're looking at not only can they spell the word bat. Oh, look at me. I did a total bad formation, bad, but we're looking, can they recognize that this word and this word rhyme? Are they similar? Like, can they hear that they're different? Can they hear that they're the same? Can they, that pattern of B-A-T, and then recognizing that as a whole word, and then realizing that, okay, bat looks like cat and looks like that, and they can come up with those kind of patterns. That's where like first and second grade we're kind of jumping into when it comes to writing. And again, we're also looking at a little bit more complex academic following directions. Can you fill in the blank? Can you describe this picture? If I'm asking you to tell me what's going on here and writing it, can you do that? So we're expanding the academic, the use of writing to more of a language purpose, that you can use writing to express yourself.
So, and from an OT standpoint, we are always going to look at that as well, because now we're going to start introducing, we've got lowercase letters that are coming in, and we're looking at the position, like the placement of these letters and how they relate to the other letters in the word. So we're looking at lowercase letters that are tall, that are small, or that drop down below the line. So now this placement, this line awareness becomes important, because our writing depends on that, how our letters relate to each other, and the sizing, the area which they're supposed to be written in, right? I didn't bring a first, second grade book, but I can show you that this is more of that. So now we're looking at how it's getting a little bit smaller. It's not, this is a lowercase in case you were wondering. So it's not quite a 1 inch anymore. I can show you here also some of the papers that you start to see them start to use. So here's a 1/2 inch paper in first and second grade, and here's a 1/2 inch, that doesn't show up very well. Let's see, how's that?
There we go.
Okay, so this is like a 1/2 inch, the paper from Handwriting Without Tears. And a lot of times I am, in order to help them with that placement of how those letters relate to each other, it's also spacing between, right? And how they relate together. So while you're teaching them like the expressive of how to use the words together, I'm looking mechanically how the words interact with each other within the space they're given to write.
Exactly.
The spacing within the words, the spacing between the words, and the placement of those words. I'm also going to be reinforcing those ideas from speech, though. Like, I'm not going to let a child misuse plurals or whatever, so we're still going to focus on that. But really, we're starting to look at getting that like accessing the dynamic movements of the wrist and getting that handwriting smaller, because as we get older, we need smaller handwriting to move faster.
Yeah. So, and then, in speech too, we're looking at sizing, we're looking at the spacing, and that's kind of, again, that's why OT and speech work so well together, because so many of these foundations and principles we do together, we do work together, but it gives your child just that extra opportunity, another way, and to generalize their skills and what they're learning.
And I don't want you to forget that while we're working on mechanical handwriting and spacing and placement and line awareness and using the space that you're given, in OT, we're also working on regulation, to be able to sit still and actually write. We're working on attention, of being able to attend and to actually spend time on writing. So those are also components that come into play, along with the visual motor skills and the hand-eye coordination and whatever else we work on as OTs. All of the things.
Yeah, all of the things. And then this last kind of age group we're going to talk about, and we could definitely keep going when it comes to writing, especially speech. We go forever when it comes to writing, but we wanted to touch on the late elementary school years. So this is like third grade and beyond. And one thing that, or a couple of things that we are both working on is, if you notice, these third graders, now we're working on much higher organization and critical thinking skills, writing a paragraph, being, writing paragraphs for different purposes. Are you telling a story? Are you persuading someone of something? Are you explaining how to do a certain task? There's different purposes to writing. So from speech, not only are we looking at that, purpose of writing. So now, we can write, that we can use it for language. So now let's use writing to convince your mom that you want a video game. Now let's use writing to write a thank you note. Now let's use writing to answer questions about it and retell the story. So you're using it for different purposes. But then on a more detailed look, we're looking at like grammatical rules, and overall just text and flow and organization in a child's writing. And what I'm very passionate too, like Tiffany, is I love the older kids and I love younger adults, and really these writing skills can be carried over into, well, can your child fill out a resume even with the developmental disability? Can they write down their personal information? Do they know how to write their address or write their phone number? I really get passionate about using writing again as another form of communication to express themselves and to use it for very purposefully and very functionally. So that late elementary school years, it's very focused on school and learning and reading, and but you're using that writing again for more higher critical thinking and complex purposes for language.
I really like that you actually just talked about that, because it's true, especially when you think about our developmentally disabled kids, the population that we see. Often they need that functional component. And so think about the safety, the safety concerns or whatever. If you know how to write your phone number down, if you don't have a lot of language, but you still know how to write your phone number down, you can get help if you need it. If you know where your address, and writing, this is something that we also will work on often in OT, so that they have, because it helps neurons that fire together wire together. So when you're learning something, it helps to write it because it activates different parts of your brain in order to memorize things. So we do those kinds of things too. But from an early elementary standpoint, mechanically, what are we doing? I mean, a later elementary. So we're starting to see sizing get smaller. We're starting to focus on being able to switch our attention from the board to the notebook or whatever. So we're also seeing in 4th and 5th grade, kids are actually needing the auditory processing component and the working memory component. So we're talking about hardcore executive functioning components right now too, where I'm listening to what the teacher's saying, I'm holding it in my memory, and I'm able to write it down. Okay, so like that component, and also the switching attention for a far point copy from the board, because in 4th and 5th grade, you start to see that far point copy become important because they're taking notes as the teacher's writing things on the board. I was going to show you kind of a progression of the size as we get to so this is my son who is like a 3rd grade age. Let's see if this works. So he's writing, it's a little smaller than a 1/2 inch. But if you think about it, this is a normal composition book, right? So a normal notebook page, it's about the same size. And when I'm using a normal notebook page in therapy, I often will give the kids a highlight across the bottom so that they have that visual cue of how to split the line for the letters. We're looking at speed. And when we're talking about people with developmental disabilities, we also have to focus on the fact that sometimes we're remediating, sometimes we're still working on those younger skills developmentally, because that's where we need to be. But from a typical standpoint, we're looking at smaller sizing, speed, and we're looking at legibility with speed, and we're looking at those executive functioning components in order to be able to start writing at a higher output in order to take notes.
Yeah. So so again, we really were passionate about making a lunch and learn like this because it's a big question when it comes to writing of, well, my child is having trouble writing, but who do I see? How do I advocate for my child? Do I go to the OT? Do I go to speech? So at Progressive, we're really great because even if we're doing an evaluation or not, maybe we're seeing our kid and we're seeing them writing more, we do make those referrals and say, hey, I noticed that your child is still working on this kind of a grasp and really they should be doing more of the tripod. I'm going to refer you to OT. And and vice versa. We do a lot of that working togetherness. And it's very, again, I can't emphasize enough like how important it is that we do work together when it comes to multisensory skills such as writing, because it requires a lot of our children to think and language and put together and then put it to pencil to paper. Like there's a lot going on. So it's no wonder that writing is an area where OT and speech, we do work together, and there are things that we work together and then there are things that we address separately too.
And it's also really important to remember that as the parents, I often will give a fine motor like handwriting warm up. I'll give you like I'll give like a home exercise program for a fine motor handwriting warm up, where you do these different activities to activate the hands, to strengthen the hands, to activate different components of prehension, to wake up the upper body, to get you ready for writing. And then just do 5 minutes of writing. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be intense. But if the parents are doing that carryover at home, let's do this, even if it's 4 times a week. And we're doing an extra 5 minutes of just writing, even giving them a journal or some sort of a composition book where you just ask them a question and have them write a couple sentences, 5 minutes. That's really how every family can help strengthen their kids' writing abilities and their fine motor skills in order to write better, like mechanics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and anyone could be doing it, so.
Yes. So we wanted to open up this time for anyone who has any kind of questions. You can comment below and we'll read them. It's a little bit of a delay, but we're going to get to them. I also wanted to see if there's anyone else who mentioned our question in the beginning of our lunch and learn was, what is the strangest place that your child has drawn on or written on? And we had some really funny ones, a lot of like under the table, in closets. Rose said on the window with a dry erase marker. Thank God he chose that marker instead of a Sharpie.
I do that in therapy. I recommend it. You can practice writing on it's the best, writing on a vertical surface.
Right. So maybe Rose should promote that. Okay, yeah, you can write on the window.
And why spend the money on an easel if you have a big window or a sliding glass door,
Yeah, I love
or
it.
a mirror.
Yep. And then we got mirrors and doors. We got a lot of mirrors and doors that that our kids are writing on. So it looks like we've got, oh, yes, you're welcome, Rose, for the information. I'm glad that it was really informative. And oh, yay. And Dominique said she loves this. This is great.
Hi, Dominique. Virtual hug.
Yes, virtual hug. So we'll give it like one more minute, but just for if there's any questions that are coming in. But Tiffany, do you have anything that you kind of want to end with today?
I'm going to encourage everyone to check out the Progressive Pediatric Therapy website, because Regina and I are also going to drop a blog post with some of these things, highlighting some of these things. And in that blog post, I'm going to highlight some of the products and stuff from Handwriting Without Tears. And if you're interested in helping your child with writing with Handwriting Without Tears, please call the office, because we've got a nice handful of therapists who have the training. Like I said, I have over 25 hours of training in the programs and the products, and I use them in my therapy. I have taught children to write using the curriculum. So if you have any concerns about those things from the OT standpoint, we have a good handful of therapists who know how to use these products and can use them in therapy with kids. So yeah.
Yeah. And then speech too. If you guys have any kind of questions, regarding your child's speech and language. We do a really good job at Progressive of just being like cohesive and being together and working together to help your child. It's a big family here at PPT. And so if you've been here, we all work together and we all try, do everything that we can to help your child. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to call the office. Talk to your pediatrician. A lot of times too, if you're not receiving a therapy. So for those of you who are new, maybe who aren't familiar with our practice, the first step and foremost is that to go to your pediatrician and say, I'm concerned with my child's writing, or I'm concerned with my child's attention or language development, and they'll write you a script to get an evaluation. And if you're already a family member here at Progressive Pediatric Therapy, then talk to your therapist and say, what are your thoughts? Do you think I need, my child could benefit from speech therapy, or do you think my child could benefit from occupational therapy? Because again, the more you advocate for your child and the more that you offer them, the better. I'm a huge proponent of like, let's attack this from the horns. Let's grab it by the horns and go. And the more emphasis and support you give your child early on and now, the better it's going to be for them in the future too. So, I'm always giving parents like a pat on the back and a gold star when they say, yeah, I noticed there was an issue, so I just asked, brought the question up, because I'm always like, yes, you're advocating for your child and you're doing such a great job. You're parent of the year kind of thing. So, really open up if you have any questions. We're a really good resource and we will find the answers for you.
Did we get any questions?
Let's see. No, we didn't. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. No, we didn't get any questions. So I think we did a pretty good job, Tiffany. But Ala said, I'm back. I am back from maternity leave. Hi, can't wait to see my friends again. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn.
Guys.
Writing, whose job is it anyway? High five, virtual high five. So, all right, guys, thank you so much, and you have a great day.
Everyone have a great day.